that kind of an adaptive evolution of the city. So that, we have seen many rigid planning laws which really tie you down, and all kinds of additional money is made because you have to bring that violate or interpret the law in a different way. So I think that seemed to be a very important issue to us, though we were not able to solve the problem. I think one of the suggestions that came out is that, infrastructure costs are very high. But what we also recognized is that, you can think about, recognize that when you build an infrastructure facility, a road, a metro line or something, the value of land all around increases. Now that value of land does not belong to the owners of the land. That addition is an outcome of the investment the public has made in it. So we should capture this. So we should say that one of the suggestions was that given FSI, which is given in earlier, but once you build the road, increase the FSI, but that FSI has to be auctioned, so that each person who wants to go from an FSI 0.5 to 3, he has to buy that in a public auction. I think once that way one can really begin to finance some of the infrastructure cost. The other issue is, I think we are all talking about compact cities, but if you think about the limit to compactness should be understood. If it's not just putting people in a multiple high-rise building, people need to walk out on the street. Schools have to be provided, other facilities are there. And if you look at all these, you might find that no more than 250 persons per hectare can be accommodated. If you have a comfortable public space available to the society, to people who live in that city. So I think one has to think about how do we have a system where we have compact city which grows from 100,000 to 1 million to 10 to 5 million and 10 million, and keeps evolving in a way where private transport needs are minimized and public transport can go up. Finally, I just want to make one other point is that, the cost of infrastructure for urban areas is 50 lakhs crores is what has been said. But we had also studied at that time the costs of providing services in rural areas of the same quality of infrastructure services as in urban areas, and that is far higher than the services cost of providing in urban areas. So that you really should not think in just of the investment requirement of 50 lakh crores. You need perhaps 150 lakh crores to provide the kind of quality and service to all the Indians and not just those who live in urban areas. So I think that report is wonderful. It is, whetted my appetite. I would like to read the larger one, but then I think some of these policy issues are the next things that perhaps need to be addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was very interesting, and I look forward to reading it in more detail. I guess we've touched upon issues like governance, and then talked about increasing the power of municipalities. So the answer is in there, but I guess enforcement is a major component of smart cities and of congestion, any of these issues. So we talk about reform and regulatory reform, but unless we tackle actual enforcement, I'm not sure any of this is really going to make a difference. So how can we empower municipalities and the police forces locally to actually say, if we want to commit to Swachh Bharat, let's impose fines on waste, on individuals as well as business. Let's impose fines on the way we use roads. It's one thing to say there's 1,000 rupees if you do a U-turn in the wrong way, but no one enforces it. How can we create that type of change so that with all the good work that's being done on infrastructure development and creation, the infrastructure is actually used properly? And I think this would also get to the point of access as well. Thanks.
I have just a small question concerning the cost of infrastructure as well, because I think we have all
somewhat of an agreement here what kind of capacities additionally would be required. So when we talk about cost of infrastructure, have you actually factored in the cost that would occur if all these necessary capacities would be built to design, plan, implement, and especially operate and maintain this infrastructure? Because then I assume, I don't know how you have reached to the numbers, but normally we start from the numbers that we have assessed right now, but right now I think we're all clear that how infrastructure is planned and maintained, there's not enough staff, there's not enough qualified staff, there's et cetera, et cetera. So how did you factor that in when you calculate the infrastructure costs, and wouldn't we have to assume a much higher cost?
Yeah, sure. Yes, in fact, respond to Sir's remarks over there. A draft value capture financing policy has already been circulated and is posted on the web for consultation, exactly containing the suggestions which you had made, which I referred in my speech also. It has all the policies and the tools, including transferable FSI, sellable FSI, tax incremental financing, increased and enhanced property taxes, and uh, enhanced share of the stamp duty through market value. The policy is there. State of Andhra Pradesh has already adopted that policy and notified it. We are pushing for all state governments to have a look and make that policy. The funds, the resources will go to the cities through that value capture. The model we have used is a metro line in Delhi, but it can be any infrastructure, including a mere declaration of a planning area. You know, the moment you declare a rural area as coming into a master plan, the values rise. Starting from that point, going up to all kind of infrastructure. So that policy is on the anvil. It is in the draft stage at the website.
Glad to say that ideas percolate 20, 30 years down the line.
Yes, and
if I may just add that, you know, the interesting thing is that you mentioned Andhra. There are some states that have been doing value capture. And I think the good thing is to look at where the best practices are and then put them together in the policy, which is what, you know, has happened. And we don't need to go very far. If you really look around, something is being practiced somewhere. How to replicate it?
yes, absolutely agree. A lot of ring roads and bypasses in the country have come up on this model already, and Nagpur has a good VCF policy at a city level, but now we are planning a state level through policy intervention. And the heart of the policy is that all the money should come to the city. No state government or the authority is taking away that money, it should go to the city. Responding to the colleague from the Australian Embassy, yes, definitely imposing the restrictions and regulations is the enforcement part. Uh, I personally feel, and the ministry is also moving towards that through the Smart City mission. Technology is a very good enabler for that. You know, to put fines in Delhi and in some cities, we are now seeing automatic traffic challans through traffic cameras, no manual intervention. The moment you touch the zebra line in your red light signal, you get a parking traffic ticket on your address through that camera recognition to the number license plate. So regulations will follow the infrastructure. In Swachh Bharat, we have been planning and deliberating regulations on putting fines for littering, waste, not scientific disposal of waste. But then the question that comes is, do we have alternates and facilities available? How long you are supposed to carry trash in your hand when you're walking in a market? If you can see a waste bin nearby, then you can impose a fine. Otherwise, so these things have been there. The new waste management rules notified by government 2 months back, they have very, very restrictive and strong fines, provided it is on the regular body who is managing it for non-scientific treatment and disposal of solid waste. So regulations will follow the infrastructure. That is currently the thinking. Without proper infrastructure, we cannot enforce fines and regulations, and the enablement of technology can be a good solution to impose wherever we have the facilities.
We don't see the results of these, what you mentioned, value capture, in the municipal finance data at all. We just don't see that. In fact, if you see the figures for 2012, 2013, the share of municipal revenues as a proportion of GDP has declined between 2007, 2008 and 2012, 2013. We are just not seeing the various kinds of innovations that the ministry is taking. That was just one point. And a couple of points on your presentation. You were saying that you have used, as Smita said, very unconventional data to make these points. But even if you see the conventional data, simply taking the percentage of people living in urban areas district-wise, you will find that 41% of the districts have not attained even the 1951 level of urbanization. So the laggard urbanization that you were talking about comes out even when you look at conventional data, not just the night live data. That comes out very, very clearly. And I wish if you would combine the two, maybe the argument would become stronger that a large part of the country remains laggard in terms of urbanization. That was point number one. Point two, I think you said it very clearly, that the private costs of inadequate infrastructure are not only high, but they have been rising over time. Now, interesting part is that they're rising partly because the people who are willing to absorb these costs, the people who are willing to internalize these costs because their incomes have risen over time. So something that was being provided by the public sector earlier is now being provided by the owner of the house for his own security and for water, whether it is water security or whether it is solid waste security absorbing. Now there's a very peculiar situation that as incomes rise, the private cost of inadequate infrastructure which are rising are being very happily being absorbed by the owners. I don't know what conclusions can we draw from this, but it does come out in a couple of studies that have been done lately. And the final point, and I think that's Neeraj should be able to respond, and then the capacity building point that OP was talking about. The municipal functions over the past 7-8 years have grown enormously. The earlier, which is despite the constitutional amendment, whose impact has not been felt at all, but you see that the municipalities are now doing, earlier they were doing the CDPs, now they're doing vision documents, they're preparing city mobility plans, they're preparing city sanitation plans, they're preparing the DPRs, they're changing over from simple accounting system to double entry and accrual based. So the whole range of activities which have come onto the municipalities in recent years are amazingly large. How well they are doing it or how inadequately, I have no idea about it. But the corresponding changes on the fiscal side to meet this, all this work that the municipalities are doing has been extremely fragile. The result being that earlier, if the municipalities were dependent on the higher levels to the extent of 60 or 65% revenues, today, in a number of states, 80% of revenues are really the transfer revenues from the higher tiers. So what was intended earlier, that municipalities should become fiscally strong, fiscally viable, what we are seeing is that exactly the opposite is happening. Fiscally, they are becoming weaker and weaker year after year on account of central government interventions. Now, these were 2 or 3 points that struck me, and I thought I'd just make them. Thank you. Thank you.
Opi, thank you very much for being here. I'm so happy you're here. On your comment, I just want to clarify one thing. On the chart there is about laggards and others. It's not rate of urbanization, it's actually rate